Hello, I'm here with the second part of my favorites of 2018. These didn't all come out in 2018, they're just things that I read and loved in 2018. So there you go, without further ado, because there's still so many books to go through, here are the rest of my faves. So there's Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this was just so good. I wasn't sure if it would quite live up to the hype, because there's always that thing where something gets so hyped out to the point where, like this, it's on the New York Times bestseller list for 42 weeks, and that's a lot of pressure, and you don't know if it will live up to all those expectations that you've created in your mind for it, which is, on me, not the book. But this very much did. It's pretty much a high fantasy inspired by West African, I believe, myths and folklore and all that. So that was super interesting for me to get to know more about, and it also, spurred up my curiosity to learn more about that. So that was really cool. And it's about a girl who's a potential magic wielder in a land devoid of magic, and she's trying to bring back magic to save her people, because there's a lot of corruption and abuse going on in the kingdom, and it's really a lot. It vaguely reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it's just super action-packed and super fun and super fast, and I really liked it. And I thought the characters were all super compelling, and the two romances, or like a romance and potential romance, one of them is super soft and wholesome, and it's taking a while to build up, and then the other is just the angstiest thing I have read in a long time. So I'm still thinking about it, and it ends with a real big bang, and so I'm very curious to read the second volume this year, and I really look forward to it. I then read Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant, who was actually Shannon Maguire, and I did mention another Shannon Maguire book in the first part of this video, so you can tell that I just really love her writing style. And this is a book about this group of scientists that heads out to the Mariana Trench to look for mermaids, pretty much, and make a documentary, because they'd previously sent a team to make a mockumentary, and then everyone on that ship died. And it's got a lot of science, it's got like killer mermaid type creatures, it's got queer scientists, it's got mentions of Comic-Con, it has a lot of like character study and stuff, and it's just so dark and gritty, and it's the kind of scary that just slowly, insidiously sips into your bones, and then before you realize it, you're just on the edge of your seat, clinking to your book, waiting to see what happens next. And I really appreciated that. And if you're looking for a spooky read, but that's also sciencey and fun and fast, that's definitely one that I would recommend, and it's so good. I then read and loved The Darkest Minds and Nether Fate by Alexandra Bracken. So I had the pleasure of winning tickets to an exclusive screening of the film, so I wanted to finally get to read the book before I did, and then I loved it so much that I had to get the second one, and so on. And it's a YA dystopian about kids with superpowers on the run, and it's a dystopian and also like a road trip book, which is the perfect mix. And I really appreciated the world building. I thought the concept was really cool. I love that it's a fun road trip book while also being a dark dystopian. I thought that's a great, unique mix. I love all the characters, and I think that Alex did such a great job in creating such different characters that function so well as a found/chosen family. I think she has such like beautiful diversity in the characters. I love them all. I love the friendships. I love the romance. I think Ruby Daly is just one of the single best, most complex YA heroines with the most growth, and I don't know. I remember so many people hyping up this series so many years ago when it first came out, and then they just didn't. But I know I'm very late to game, but I would still love to see people giving this the hype it deserves, because it really is one of the superior YA series, and it deserves to have left a mark. I then also finally read everyone's favorite, and it's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is basically the story of this journalist that's been asked by an elderly former Hollywood starlet to interview her, but then actually the woman just wants her to write her biography, and her story in the eye of the media has always been more about her seven husbands than it has been about her charity work or acting career and stuff. So this was so beautiful. It makes such a great miniseries. It has that old Hollywood glam, and it has a lot of social commentary, and it's real gay, and it's so beautiful. It has such a touching friendship in it between Evelyn and one of the husbands, producers, people in her life. It has such an interesting dynamic between, I think Michelle is the name of the lady interviewing her, and Evelyn. The way Evelyn talks about how her identity was kind of policed by the people trying to sell Evelyn Hugo, the character, rather than Evelyn, the person, but the way she still went along with it because she really wanted it. It's such a good book, and I feel like it really taught me about how kind of I should approach some things in life, because there's something so ruthless and unapologetic and inspirational about Evelyn, and I couldn't not fall under her spell as well. On the complete different end of the spectrum, I read a really fun fantasy-ish middle grade, and it's Arusha and the End of Time by Roshni Chakshi. And this is pretty much a female Indian version of Percy Jackson, and this was actually published under the Rick Riordan imprint, and it's one of the books that I've been pitching and selling the most in the shop, just because I think it's more niche than some of the really popular middle grades, and it's such a fun, wonderful book, and I'm dying for the sequel even though I'm about to turn 21. I'm still a child at heart. And it follows Arsha, who is a little girl who has a tendency to embellish the truth from time to time, and when her classmates find out that she's been lying about her grand plans for the holidays, she tries to impress them by lighting this lamp in the museum she lives in with her mother, that her mother has always told her not to, light up because danger. And then a monster, demon-type creature, gets out of the lamp. The world is in mortal danger, and she has to save the world and her mother, and she finds out that she's the embodiment of the spirit of this hero, and it's so good, and it's so funny, and it has a little bit of inspirational moral lesson things sprinkled through it, which is great, especially since it's for children, and I, as an adult, just kept fangirling over everything in it because it's so good and it's so funny. And if you like Rick Riordan's, I know I keep comparing them, but it's a similar concept. If you like his writing style, if you like the humor in this, is super similar, and this just made me feel like an excitable little child for a while, and I really, really needed that, and I really appreciated it, and I'm just trash for anything Roshni will do in the future. I couldn't not include Muse of Nightmares in this. Like, look at it. I devour this. This is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer, which was one of my favorite books of last year and all time. I will link my review of that down below. And I don't want to say much because this is obviously a sequel, and so it will spoil the plot of the first one, but that ended with a bang, so it's super interesting to see this developing with that. And I'm trash for anything Laini Taylor writes, and she adds a new POV in this, and at first I was a little thrown off. I'm like, just give me the characters I know and love. Like, this is good, but why? And then as you see it all kind of unravel and come together, it's so interesting, and it's so well thought out and put together, and the world building keeps developing and growing more and more and more, and it's just blowing my mind. And there's little nods towards her other series that I love, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and this turns from high fantasy into slightly sci-fi in this, and it's so interesting and unique, and the writing style stays beautiful. And there's some things in this that are painfully relevant to the universal political climate in our world, so it just hurt my soul to read them, but it was so necessary and powerful, and I love this, clearly. I also simply had to include Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the sequel to The Diviners, which again, it was on my favorite list of last year, and it's like an eternal favorite. This is kids with superpowers and government conspiracies in 1920s New York, and it's super spooky and super eerie, and it's super diverse, and Libba Bray keeps kind of adding on to the social commentary in this, which I really wholeheartedly appreciated, and I thought it was phenomenal, and she's one of my favorites. And I read this in October, so the spookiness of it was perfect. Let me tell you, carrying this in my back to college and work, whew, it was a commitment, but it was well worth it. And I just found out that the third one in the series isn't the last one, but there's no release date set for the last one or the fourth one or whatever one. So I don't know if I want to save that for October or read it as soon as possible, because this was so good, but I guess you'll see. I also listened to the audiobook of Pride by Eby's Boy, and that's narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo, who is the author of the Poetics. So that was really neat. I was so excited when I saw that my library had the audiobook of that, and I was gonna like take it easy and listen to a little bit of it, and then I had my physical book, because I started when it was in work late, and I was gonna read my physical book in the coffee shop before heading into work, because I get there stupid early. But I was just so enthralled in the book that I had to consume as much of it as I possibly could. And so I almost finished it that day, but then I didn't, and I had to go to work, and it was very sad. But anyway, this is a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice, which I'm so here for. I love Pride and Prejudice. It's my favorite thing. So a modern, unique take on it was really refreshing and heartwarming and wonderful. And it has a lot of commentary about development in urban areas and class and stuff, so it was really, really, really wonderful, and it was diverse, and it's just something I would really recommend. And I thought that consuming it through the medium of the audiobook was something that really added to the reading experience of it, because Elizabeth Acevedo is just so talented as a narrator, so I'd really recommend that you pick that up. And I think I already convinced my friend Meg of doing that, and she really liked it, so there you go. I also read the Anna Dressed in Blood / Girl of Nightmares duology by Kendar Blake, and that's because I read Kendar's Three Dark Crowns this year, and I really, really loved the writing style. I don't know why that's not on my favorite list. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that I just kind of forgot about it, but my friend Rachel pretty much bullied me into reading that, and because I loved it, I realized that she'd also written these that I'd had on my one to read on Goodreads for years, and then I reread what they were about, and it's pretty much a better supernatural, and I was sold. And it's real angsty, and it's super fun, and it's super spooky. So I also read that during October or early November, and I really, really enjoyed them. I don't think I loved the second book as much as I did the first one, but the first one was so solid, and I would highly recommend. And since we are here, let me just say, I read and loved Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake. This is a fantasy story about three triplets, obviously, that are fighting to be the real queen and heir to the throne, and they've been separated for years, and they all have different magical powers, and some of them are better at them than others, and this was a really promising first book. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was a super promising first book in a series, and I'm dying to read the other ones, and everyone and their mother has read and loved this, so that's just further testament to the quality of it. My sister has bullied me into finally reading one of her absolute favorite books of all time, and that's Moxie by Jennifer Matthew, and it was just as good as I expected it to be. It's pretty much about this girl who attends a really sexist, misogynist school full of double standards, and she decides that as a silent protest to form a feminist zine inspired by these zines that she found in her mother's memory box. And it's just heartwarming and empowering and wonderful, and I really loved it. And I thought it had one of the most feisty yet subdued in a way protagonists, and she was really complex and full of dualities, and I really enjoyed that. And the message is wonderful. I just love anything that's girl power and female empowerment and feminism, and there's a lot of talk of intersectionality and how she, starting off on this feminist path, didn't really consider that at first because of the privilege that she has, but when she's faced with these comments from women that are unlike her, she realizes that there's an issue, and then that they should focus on the larger scale instead of just defending the rights of this specific group of women. This is so nice. And funnily enough, read Just One Day by Gail Forman. I'm only like 10 years late to the game, but I was talking to Gail at an event, and I told her that a lot of the time her books have the tendency to find me at just the right time when I need them. And this is about a girl who goes from America to England for the summer with like a camp group thing, and she meets this handsome white male who's like, let's go to Paris for a date. This is me oversimplifying things, but she just goes to Paris for one day with a guy, and I thought it would be like a cutesy romance, but that's literally just half the book, and then the other half is her beginning college and processing how that one day shaped who she is, and she's having a rough time in college. And I too went to Paris on my own, however, no handsome white male for me, but what can I do? So I too went to Paris on my own for just one day, and then started college and had a rough time and think a lot about that day. And yeah, this was such an unexpected book. I just thought it would be a wholesome, fast, cutesy 3.5 romance book, but no, it was really powerful, and it really hit hard, and there's some talk of depression and the lethargy that comes with that, and it's inspired by Shakespeare, which some of you might appreciate, and also it's about people and different identities that we as individuals encompass, and it's really smart and great. I'm gonna try to breeze through this one because I'm sure none of you care at this point, but Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassie Clare. I could not mention this. This is the latest Shadowhunter novel, and it's the conclusion to the Dark Artifice series, and it's really good, and it's Cassie's best in terms of craft, and I love all the characters in this, and this was just a masterpiece, and that's that. I will then link my December wrap-up down below because all of these books are featured in that, but I'm gonna start off with A Study in Charlotte, which is the first book in the Sherlock Holmes series, and this is a YA crime, murder, mystery thing, and it's wonderful. It follows the relatives of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and they're Sherlock Holmes and Jamie Watson, and they're a wonderful, wholesome Slytherin Hufflepuff duo trying to solve a murder that they're being framed for, and it's super good, and I love the mystery, and it keeps you on your toes. And I think that both the characters are super different and equally complex, so it's interesting to see how they function together as a team. And Charlotte is really reticent about that idea at first, but then she just goes with it, and it's super, I love them, and I can't wait to see where their relationship goes, because they're so great together. I also read Enchantée by Gita Trellis, and this is a YA historical fantasy about a girl who can perform magic, and so she goes from turning scraps of metal into coin to scamming rich people at first sight while playing cards. And it's a lot about money and class and legacy and what a legacy is built on and freedom of the press, and it's wonderful. And it was one of my biggest surprises of the year just because the writing style is so great, and I would highly recommend this if you enjoy historical fantasy. Like, if you like the Infernal Devices, I feel like you might like this, which, you know, a lot to say because the Infernal Devices is one of my favorite series. On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Needless to say, The Hate You Give is one of my favorite books of all time. And I thought this was such a powerful sophomore novel, and it's about an aspiring rapper who's trying to make it and also trying to help her family stay afloat and live up to her father's legacy because he was also a rapper. And she's trying to save her community because she's in Garden Heights, just like Star was. And it's, again, a lot about money, different levels of privilege, class, race. It's so powerful, but it's so fun. The rapping aspect of it is amazing. It's really good, and it's so touching to see this one girl trying to discover who she is when there's so much on her shoulders, and she's flawed, but you can understand it, and every decision she makes is natural. Like, even if she makes bad choices, you can't judge her because you see where she's coming from and you see why she's doing what she's doing. And the mother figure in this book is great. I think that Angie Thomas writes some of the best parents in YA, and it's just such a wonderful book. Please do pick it up when it's out in February. And finally, I have to mention another middle grade, and it's Tilly and the Book Wanderers, which is the first book in the Pages & Co. series by Anna James. And this is about a little girl who can chat to characters in books, and also she can travel inside books, and she lives with her grandparents inside a bookshop that they own, and they're also book wanderers, and her mother has disappeared for years and they don't know where she is, so she's also trying to find out more about that, but also learn how to travel into books safely. Don't book wander carelessly, okay? Please, that's your advice to take for the day. And it's wonderful, and I wish I would have read something like this when I was younger, but it still touched me and moved me in so many ways as an adult, and it's perfect, and I'm trying to pitch it to as many people as possible, and I wish I would have read it earlier, but what can you do at this point, you know? And if you love books, I think you would love this because it's a lot about the special relationships that people have with books, and it's really touching. So please do let me know what your favorite read or reads of 2018 were. And thank you so much for putting up with this. My voice is gone. I'm gonna go take my face off and make some tea and just sleep for 1,000 years because these are so many words that have just come out of my mouth and my brain hurts. Thank you.